Thank you for that. And myself, Emma, I do a lot of these diagnostic, and I have done a lot more feedbacks where I've fed back to parents, and it's about sometimes parents are quite relieved because they feel their children, I mean, they will be able to understand themselves and so well other people understand them. And I've had instances where I have been able to explain to the children in terms of autism. Yes, it affects the way that individuals think, but then what I learn is about individuals with autism actually think outside the box. So that's what we look at it. They think, they ask the questions why, so they don't just do things for just doing things sake, but they want to know a reason to every sort of thing that has been asked. And that is really important, like Emma said, when we sort out that assessment and see what has been going on, we seek the strength. And by seeking the strength, it means that we are going to identify them, and then we can channel our children's sort of strength into quite a positive things for future. And we do know quite a lot of individuals who are have diagnosis of autism, but then they are doing quite well. I think, Emma, it's something that it will be quite good for parents to know these things, because autism actually it doesn't define who the person is. It's actually focusing on strength and putting. Once we know what it is for now, then we put the right support in place for our children to have a better life for the future. That was really helpful. I remember, in fact, before I even asked you, I remember at some point I done speaking to someone who shared a very interesting story where there was a child who was playing with cars for quite a lot of the time, and it's quite an intense interest. But then once the parents had identified that and there was an assessment that was done, they were able to support the child in that. The child grew up to work in one of the top car industries, and is really very productive in terms of what they are doing. So I think seeking an assessment doesn't mean your child is autistic, but then again, if there is, then the right support will be put in place. Thank you so much for that. And Emma, I just wanted to ask from you, if a parent is listening to us and they feel a bit overwhelmed, what are some of the steps they with at home? What can they do in terms of if they feel a child is struggling with autism, or even if there is a diagnosis and they are struggling in terms of managing? Is there anything you feel they can do at home?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I suppose partly it might depend on the age and developmental stage of the child. So we might have people listening who have much younger children who have no language at this stage. And we might have listeners who have teenagers who are verbally fluent. So partly it might depend on the age and stage of the child, and again, what are their strengths and what they're struggling with. One thing I would always talk about is connection, and actually I think this applies to everybody, whether autistic or not. But it's around finding a way to connect with your child in a way that kind of works. So sometimes the way that we might try to connect with other people might be based on what we know. If we're trying to connect, for example, by asking questions verbally, whether it's what did you do at school today, and the child is not really giving very much back because they're really exhausted, and actually their favourite way to communicate is not verbally. We have to think about, are we trying to connect with the child or whoever it might be in a way that kind of works? So partly it's thinking about choosing your moments, because if you have a child who really, really struggles at school and they've had an exhausting day trying to manage all of the demands of school, with all the busyness, the social demands, the sensory demands, executive functioning, like planning, work, academic demands, and the time that you try to connect with them is when you see them at the end of the school day, that actually might be the most difficult time for them to connect with you. Because at that point, they may need space, they may need to decompress, they may need to just not think, not have to talk.